So my request is that this group can move further so that whenever these girls are married, I can not only those girls of ours, but also the girls in that area can also see that they can do it. Thank you so much. President Obama, okay. Well, thank you for your good efforts. This young lady right there. I ask everybody to try to be as brief as possible so I can get as many additional questions as possible. Comment, thank you very much, Mr. President. I am here on behalf of the Devolution Forum. That's a civil society coalition that was set up early last year because we were very concerned about challenges to the implementation of devolution in Kenya. And so I'll speak to just, very briefly, 4 points. I have a more comprehensive memorandum. But one is, we're very concerned about the structure development assistance on devolution. A lot of it is being channeled through the national government to go to the county governments. And this is contrary to the Constitution, which recognizes the two levels of government as having shared sovereignty. Now, this is a ploy by the government to keep power centralized. It's really a method of controlling the governance structure. So we find that even with the US, some of your programs are being channeled in this way, through the national government, for the county government. And we find that this is bad for devolution. We find also the World Bank very much is channeling their funding in this direction. The other thing that I'd like to address is to do with the war on terror. We've noted that this an intergovernmental aspect to the war on terror. And because the security reforms have not been implemented to the pace that was supposed to be. We find that these intergovernmental institutions, such as the county policing authorities, the community policing, ideologically and even structurally have not been set up. Ideologically, we find that they are being taken as more information gathering rather than community policing, where communities get actively involved in their community policing. So we are very concerned that as the US assists the U.S. government, are you going to look at the ideological foundations of the structures? That will engage citizens and the country governments in the security process? Because if we don't do that, then it will undermine the war on terror and security. I'll pick one more because President Obama, because you're running out of time. Question, I'm out of time. There's a trend in Africa where the civic space is being closed. And we're looking at countries like Rwanda, Ethiopia. We're looking at our country. And we're wondering. What's the response of the US government? We heard your excellent remarks and sentiments. But of course you are working with a government that has demonstrated an intent to close the civic space. So what's your approach going to be as you consolidate your work? With the Kenyan government in terms of supporting civil society? We're finding even support for civil society is not as rigorous as it should have been. Thank you. President Obama, well, those are all excellent remarks. Let me just broadly talk about devolution and then we'll talk about how. We are interacting with the national government on civil society issues. With respect to devolution, Kenya now has a constitution and it has laid out how devolution is supposed to proceed. That will be subject to interpretation and legal challenges and political arguments. That's probably not an issue that the United States will be weighing in on deeply. And the reason I say that is because we have a system of government with a national or federal government. And then state governments and then local governments. And the relationship between the federal government and the states. The relationship between federal law and local laws is extremely complicated and has been. The source of constant democratic debate, argument, challenges, court cases. And that's been going on for 250 years now. I mean, that was part of the original issue in the formation of the United States of America. How much power remained with the states and how much power went to the federal government. So the challenge that we would have as an international or as an outside party as the United States of America is that how that plays itself out within Kenya is ultimately up to the Kenyan people. Because there are arguments actually on both sides when it comes to national versus state power. In the United States, for example, those who wanted to maintain racial segregation consistently used The argument that states have the right to do what they want, and the federal government doesn't have. The authority to enforce civil rights laws that are discriminating against minorities at the state level. And I actually think, in that situation, the national government needed to say to states that had segregation laws, you have to stop. And national law and the rights of individuals that are in the Bill of Rights are superior to whatever challenges or whatever claims are being made for states' rights. Now, on the other hand, there are times where the national government is involving itself in states unnecessarily. And imposing views that may not be properly adapted to the local region. So I guess what I'm saying is that that's an issue, that's it. Would be very difficult for us as outsiders to try to figure out. What we can do is to say, consistent with democracy. You have a constitution, you should abide by what's in your constitution. And you can make your own decisions about the systems that you want to arrange. And the balance between federal and state power, or local power or counties. And as long as it's proceeding in a legal process consistent with the Constitution, we're okay with that. So I just wanted to be honest, that's not probably an issue where I'm going to be asking the ambassador of the United States to get deeply involved in, because it's just too complicated. Every country is going to be different in terms of finding that balance. Now, the issue of civil society is different, because we do believe that if you have laws that restrict people's ability to organize and speak out peacefully, and participate in their government and petition their government if those become too restrictive. Then that, in any society, contradicts the basic premise of democracy. And I recognize that there have been some concerns about some of the laws that have either been proposed or are being interpreted in ways that appear to restrict the legality of certain activities by certain groups. Rather than to say specifically what we're for and against, because frankly, I don't know all the details. What I will say is this: we will look suspiciously on laws that say certain peaceful groups can't operate just because they might be critical of the government, for example. I mean, our bias as a country and in our foreign policy is to say that if a group is peacefully organizing and advocating for issues, that they should be able to do so without excessive government interference. Now, if the groups are violent, then that's a different issue. But you heard me in my press conference yesterday. I don't. Counterterrorism to be used as an excuse then to crush legitimate dissent. And we will guard against that as well. So we have every intention to work on a whole range of common interests with the Kenyan government. There are areas where we have a complete agreement. And we will work through the Kenyan government in order to accomplish those common goals. We want to be helpful and supportive of the national agenda. But we'll also be working with NGOs and local organizations at the local level. Many of the organizations that area we have been supporting. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that in all of our interactions and engagements with the government, when we see an organization, for example, that we have determined is, in fact, legitimate and is peaceful, that it is in some ways being suppressed, we will speak up and will be very clear about it. So we're going to be engaged, we're going to be involved. But as I was telling, I met with some of the opposition leaders. Very briefly, those who are not in government after the speech. And I told them, you have a legally elected government and we're going to work with that government. But we're also always going to be listening to all elements of Kenyan society. It was funny, though, one of the opposition leaders, I won't mention who, was saying, you know, we really need you to press the Kenyan government on some issues. And I had to say to him, I said, I remember when you were in government you kept on saying, why are you trying to interfere with Kenya's business? You should mind your own business. So everybody wants the United States to be very involved when they're not in power. And when they're in power, they want the United States to mind their own business. I think the way that we are going to operate is just to continue to be honest and to promote the kinds of policies and interests that we believe in. But ultimately, and this is probably a good way to close, ultimately I just want to remind everybody that Kenya's prosperity, its freedom, its opportunity, the strength of its democracy is going to depend on Kenyans. It's not going to depend on somebody else.